The following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tosaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, everybody. That theme music means it is time once again for the option block. And as we sit down to record this program today, that theme music has played 300 times, or I should say actually 299 times. That would be the 300th. You're right. That's right, listeners. This is indeed the 300th episode of the option block. Hard for all of us here to really wrap our heads around that crazy, crazy number that the show has reached, such an epic milestone. But here it is nonetheless, and we're all pretty excited to celebrate it. My name, of course, is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from this here Options Insider Radio Network, upon which this fine program has aired now for over 3 years. Crazy. Hard to believe. Hard to wrap my head around that, but yet that is the case. We've had some fun changes, some fun, all kinds of fun stuff. And I think for this episode today, for this 300th episode spectacular, we're going to take a look back, if you will, a little walk down memory lane and reminisce about some of our favorite moments, favorite topics, favorite discussions and debates and all kinds of fun stuff from the past 3+ years. I know a lot of you guys wrote in with some of your favorite moments as well, so we'll get to those a little bit later, but a lot of fun stuff to get to on the show. But before we even do that, let me introduce someone. It's been quite a while since he's been on the show, but we were able to drag him back, kicking and screaming, for the 300th episode spectacular. He is none other than Mr. John Grigus. He is now the major domo over there at Schwab, because I have no idea what his title is. He has risen so far and so high since his days on the option block. Mr. Grigus, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks for the great introduction. Yeah, it's good to be back. Doing the podcast was a highlight of my week, what we did bi-weekly there, and, got to hang out with Tosaw, Cavanaugh, Mark, Mr. Lobster out east, and now Alex has taken over the role at OX, but it's good to be back. And if you did like that music at the beginning, that was picked up by yours truly, and if you don't like it, feel free to write Cavanaugh.
Yes, you're right. That was your doing. I forgot early on when we were still planning the show, in their planning phases, I said to John, hey, go peruse through some of these sites for stock music and see what you like. And he came back to me with that very rockin' tune, and I thought there's no way that this is going to make it on the show. Sure enough.
Yeah, it's like a jolt of coffee, right? Gets you up. If you at the end of a long day, it's what we need to really start talking about what went on in the market.
It does.
It
gets me excited.
Exciting, Mark. I would agree.
Hey, there he is, joining us from wherever he's dialing in from. I don't even know. It is
is that Mark Sebastian I just heard?
The ghostly voice of Mark Sebastian.
I'm here in Durango, Colorado, enjoying the weather and excited to be celebrating the show, the 300th show. It's kind of neat that they already have a movie about our 300th show, don't you think?
Yes. Very accurate, I find, too. It has my rippling abs captured quite well. It has the carnage that occurs on a regular episode captured quite well as well. So I thought it was very true to life.
I thought you played Xerxes in that one. I didn't know you were the rippling guy.
Oh, yes. I am the hermaphroditic Persian king. Is that what you're saying to me, sir?
Exactly. All that crazy piercing and stuff.
I thought he was the hunchback, Andrew. The traitorous hunchback.
The traitorous hunchback.
If I am anything...
I just realized that if you're in Durango and Mark is in Chicago and I'm in Maine, he's kind of getting the option pit sandwich right now.
Ooh.
He's stuck in between. What's he going to do?
Yes, that lovely thought. Thankfully, I have Grigus here to also form the meet with me. So
He's been
I
calling me down to be meet for a long time, and mission accomplished.
Listeners, that voice also is none other than the Rock Lobster, Mr. Andrew Giovinanzzi, the other half, the better half of the Option Pit Hetero Life Mate team. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a heat wave day in Maine today. I think we're in double digits.
And that laugh comes from last but not least member to join our panel today, good old Uncle Mike Tosaw, beaming in from the hinterlands known as scenic and lovely St. Charles. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the Option Block 300th episode spectacular.
Oh, it's exciting to be here. It's hard to believe that we've had 300 episodes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to really process and wrap the head around. That's why we have Grigus here to help us do that today.
Yeah, this is like one of those TV shows where you bring back all the old characters.
Yes, all the ones the fans wrote in and said they wanted to hear about again a few times, just a couple of times to bring them back, and then they're good. They're happy again for another year or two.
There you go. Very good.
And John, we're not going to go. We're going to dispense with the traditional format today because it is such a momentous occasion, and instead we're going to go kind of just like I said, kind of take a walk down memory lane. A little bit of reminiscing about what some of our favorite stuff is. I mentioned a lot of you wrote in with some of your favorite moments and topics, and even a few of you had the temerity to send in some questions. Maybe we'll get to those as well. But a lot of great stuff to talk about. I think, well, actually, I have some fun facts about the show. But I know, Mark, you have to run. So maybe why don't you kick us off there with some of your favorite moments, favorite memories from the past 3+ years?
I think some of my favorite memories have been, just the joking around and the making of jokes. I love the BBI. I love all the 80s and Transformers references intermixed with, what I think is probably the best, not probably, what I know is the best option commentary in the business. And so it's been really fun for us to kind of look at things. One of the really interesting things is we did our show on the Thursday in 2011 after, right before that credit downgrade, and it was when the S&Ps were off $50, and it's really fascinating to go back and listen to that show and kind of hear all the different discussion about what was going on. I believe we even did one on that Monday after the credit downgrade and all the carnage. So if you're really interested, if you really want to kind of get some history, go back and listen to some of the early stuff where we're talking about, what just happened in the marketplace. And I think there's a lot to bring in that during those periods of time.
Yeah, that was certainly a good extended period for the show because there's so much grist for the mill, so much going on in the marketplace, so much vol for an extended period over a month. We really had a lot to really sink our teeth into in that period. So a good idea, listeners, go back and check it out. In fact, listeners, you can go back and check out our entire archive over there on the website, theoptionsinsider.com/the options with an S. The options block is actually a bit of a typo. And it's kind of been that way for 3 years now. It's kind of a running joke over here. So we've never actually gone back and changed it because it's kind of funny to us now. So yeah, in fact, a little fun fact on the show. This is numbered episode 300, but we actually, if you count all the sneak preview episodes we did before the show officially premiered, this is actually episode 306. The show itself, the show proper, first aired back on September 16th of 2010, so almost 3 years and exactly 3 months ago to the date. We're recording this, listeners, on December 19th here, of course, in 2013. And the show, that was the first sneak preview show where we were still kind of kicking the tires and testing everything out. And the show actually officially premiered about a little bit, almost a month later on October 8th, 2010. So we cranked in six sneak preview episodes before we actually launched this show proper. And people always ask me, well, how did the show come about? And, it was funny. OX had been contacting me and asking me for a while about the idea of doing a show. They wanted to do a show. And we could just never make it work for a variety of reasons. My schedule, the education team schedule over there at OX. It just really never came to fruition. And it finally, like exactly about a little over 3 years ago, they came to me again. So we really wanted to do a show. How can we make this work? And so we snowballed a few ideas. And we had some interesting ones. One of them was, of course, bringing guys like you, John, and the trading desk on, as opposed to the education team, to do a twofold thing, show a little bit more of the people who interact with the customers on a day-to-day basis and kind of see what's going on with you guys and what you're hearing from the customers. And also because your schedules with the three of you, was you, Tim, and Rob at the time, could actually rotate on the show a little bit easier than some of the guys on the education team who were always off doing webinars and stuff. And then we kind of added out the panel. We kind of finalized it. We brought on both the mics because at the time you guys were really working as part of OX with the Brokers Express arm and KYO, so it made a lot of sense. And I knew Mike Cavanaugh quite well from his KYO subsidiary. I didn't know Tosaw as well, but Mike C. vouched for him, and I didn't really buy him at the first. I thought, I don't know about this Tosaw guy, but he's come on to prove me wrong. I still don't know who's really to blame for Sebastian weaseling his way onto the show. OX points the finger at me. I point the finger
Mike
at them.
Cavanaugh asked me to do it. That's how.
It was Cavanaugh? It was Cavanaugh's fault?
It was Kavanaugh.
Oh, he's off my Christmas card list. I know Josh tried to blame me. I always blame Josh. And it turns out it was Cavanaugh. All this time, I've always wondered. See, secrets come out on the 300th episode. And, of course, last but certainly not least, the Skype gods are not smiling on OX, so we have two of them on by phone, and we are joined now, listeners, by the Viceroy himself, good old Alex Jacobson, from Options Express. Alex, it wouldn't be the 300th episode spectacular without you. Glad you can make it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. I'm glad I could be here. The Skype gods were not smiling on me today.
Skype gods are a fickle bunch. I found if you don't sacrifice a little lamb at least every quarter to them, they tend to frown upon you.
Okay, well, we'll find a lamb.
Speaking of sacrificial lambs, Mr. Grigus, it's been a while since you've been on the show, but what are some of your favorite memories, maybe particularly in those early days when we first started doing it and it was kind of really, really the Wild West from a show and from an options perspective?
Well, you brought up a couple things about the inception of the show, and to go back all the way to the beginning, one of the first memories I have is when we all met in one of the boardrooms here at Options Express, and that was when I think we had yourself, Cavanaugh, Mark, Josh, and maybe one other person. And as soon as I walk into the room, I start battling with this guy I've never met before. Handsome-looking guy, I must say. And he starts ripping into me, and I'm like, have I met this guy before? Because usually that's not how people handle themselves when they've never met someone before. They're a little more courteous and stuff. And that person happened to be Mark Sebastian, and he has really never let up since. So I knew we had the right person for the show to kind of add that edge that we needed in any type of podcast. But right there, that kind of set the tempo for the future shows that we had. Once we got kicked off, there was a memorable time when Sebastian and I were the only ones that hosted. I think that still remains the highest rated show of the 300 shows out there.
And the best show.
Without a doubt. But the most memorable moment, I think, for me was this might have been the 100th show, the Elephant and Castle live show that we did.
Yeah, that one stands out.
Really fun. That was a blast. I said that was a blast.
I think we planned for 2 hours. It might have went closer to 4. We planned on 1 to 2 beers each. That might have went closer to a half dozen. We had the man himself in the audience. And who did we have from Think or Swim? We had a couple panelists on there. It was calling the top of the bond market that we always like to joke about. But that was a truly special day. We had a lot of people in the audience from Options Express and from different areas of the industry checking us out, and a day I'll remember for a long time. Yeah, that really tops my list, too, when I was looking back at kind of my favorite memories from the show, just because we have done other live shows. I remember, including live shows with audiences. I remember one of our first really big live shows was at the Futures Industry Association Expo here in Chicago. We did it live on the stage there in the Expo Hall, and that was kind of fun. That was still very much in the early days of the show. But yeah, you're right. That live show that we did, and I have it here, we actually did that show
on, I have the date, hold on, right here. It was July 22nd of 2011. Listeners, if you haven't checked that one out, I recommend you go back in the archives and check it out. Block out some time because it is quite the live extravaganza. We took over a bar here in Chicago, Elephant and Castle. We filled it with a bunch of Option Block listeners and OX clients, and we had a great just extravaganza of a time. I think we had 9 or 10 panelists by the time it was all said and done. Quite a few beverages. Some had more than others. I won't say who, but I'm guessing you could guess who that may be. I had to hold down the hosting duty, so I was kind of limited to 1 or 2 throughout the soiree, but it was really fun. It really went on. It was a fun conversation. And, we've done other live stuff since, mostly with us in a room together, but we haven't gone back and done that big live extravaganza with an audience again. I think we should probably reinvestigate that for the new year. What do you say, Alex? Maybe we'll mix it up with an OX educational event and we'll put it all together. Next time you guys have a big soiree in town, we'll invade it with the Option Block crew. How does that sound?
Absolutely. We would love to do it.
Yeah, that was before you joined the show, so you missed that big extravaganza, but that was certainly probably really, one of my, I think a lot of us pretty much the highlights that made that episode. That was really one of the most fun things we've done here on the show. Some other little fun facts I was able to cobble together for the show. We, of course, have 300 episodes. That's about 300 hours of content, not even including the sneak peeks. If you sat down and listened to us pretty much nonstop, you could do it for about 12 days, almost 13 days, 12 days and 18 hours of Option Block before you run out of content. So if you have a long commute, there you go. We've got you covered. Of course, that's not really realistic. Who's going to listen nonstop? You have to sleep. So in reality, you probably listen for about 12 hours straight. So if you did that, you can do it for nearly a month, about 25 days and 25 and a half days or so. So there you go. We've got you covered from a content perspective. Of course, again, you can find all those shows over there at theoptionsinsider.com/theoptionsblock, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your stuff. If you subscribe to the shows there, you can find all the archives. I encourage you, if you have some time on a commute, you're looking for something, go back and listen to those ones. Of course, the trading block stuff is kind of a time capsule from its era, but the educational stuff is all still very relevant today, and all the analysis we do, all the listener mail you guys writing with great questions, a lot of that stuff is still very, very timely and very resonant today. Of course, we've also had, over the 3+ years of the show, we've had 9 co-hosts. That would be me, and then, of course, Mark and Andrew from Option Pit. We got both Mikes from KYO/RCM, and then we have John, Rob, and Tim in the initial wave over there at OX, and then now superseded by the Viceroy over there. So 9 co-hosts. I tried counting up the guests. I have no idea how many guests. Got to be at least 30-odd over the years, if not more. I also did some digging in terms of this kind of like a trading patterns guessing game, but for the Option Block. I did some digging into what we actually talked about over those 3 years. It was kind of interesting. I'll let you guys guess. What would you say is the number one most popular underlying that we talked about the most here on the past 3 years in terms of how many times it comes up and is featured in the titles and in our show notes that is actually worthy of that much conversation we feature in the show notes here on the show?
Individual equities? You're talking
any underlying, the whole universe.
Apple.
All right,
VIX.
1 vote for Apple.
I would say VIX.
2 votes for VIX. So 3 votes for Apple, 2 votes for VIX.
Yep.
VIX.
Interesting. 3 votes for tied then, I guess. Well, VIX is the winner. Actually, it edged it out by a very slight margin. VIX came up in about 112 of our shows, and these are, of course, discussions that were significant enough to merit being included either in the title of the show or in the actual show notes. That's kind of how I scan for this stuff. It was a little bit of a shorthand cheat code. We don't have every topic we discuss in every show, but it came up in about 112 shows. So VIX is the leader. Apple, of course, a very, very strong number 2, came up in about exactly a third, 99 of the 300 shows. We discussed Apple in some way, shape, or form. Who wants to guess at the number 3?
GLD.
You would think that. Actually, you know what? Gold is actually about number 5, with about 23 actual include. We talked about it more times than that, but where the conversation was lengthy, I think significant enough to really be reflected in the actual, the questions or the show notes or the titles of the show. So if you talk in total episodes, it's been touched on, probably more than that, but significant Groupon. I didn't do Groupon. That's a good one, John. Let me search.
I know we talked about Netflix for a long time there too as well. So.
Well, Facebook is about number 3. But once you get past VIX and Apple, it really drops off. Facebook is number 3 with about 34 mentions. Silver only about 8 mentions in the actual show notes itself, which I thought was kind of surprising. I thought Silver would be up there. Google, only about 10 mentions. Volatility, this is the term volatility itself. Of course, that also mixes in with VIX, about 29 mentions. So I guess if you add that up with VIX, if they're separate shows, then actually VIX is even higher. VIX is close to 140 or so. So yeah, VIX is kind of the leader. Let me pull up for you, John, because you made it all the way back. Let me pull up Groupon and see how we're looking here. Well, according to my very, very imprecise, non-scientific search of our show notes, only about 4 shows actually feature Groupon in the actual, discussion notes or in the show title. So, therefore, it didn't hit on enough shows to move the needle. So, yeah, that kind of surprised me. Of course, Apple and Amazon, or Apple and VIX, not surprising, but some of the other ones. How low they ranked is kind of interesting. Listeners, I encourage you can play the home game as well. Go to that page on our site and search for all the different underlyings. Someday maybe we'll transcribe all of the episodes, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Not until that becomes a much cheaper and easier proposition.
I want to know if Zynga beat Groupon. That's all I want to know.
Okay.
Yeah, Zynga would have been on my top 5 list.
All right, Zynga, here we go.
That's I'm still feeling the scars from that one.
Yeah, you're feeling better now. It's almost a $4 stock.
I am feeling better now.
So anyway, Mark, I could just stop by for a minute. I just wanted to let everybody know that thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to 300 more shows with Mark and Andrew and the whole team. So. Thank you very much for your listenership. And Grigus, good to hear your voice. We got to get you back on more.
Absolutely. I just got to get it approved and do a couple blood samples for compliance, and I'll be all set to go.
Can't wait.
All right, Mark, glad you can make it, and happy 300 to you, sir.
Thank you. Sparta!
All right, and he is gone, but the show itself is not done, not by a long shot. Uncle Mike, we haven't had your favorite reminiscence yet from the show.
I have 2 of them, actually, that came to mind. The first one is, I guess, kind of on a personal note, when actually I have 3 of them. First one was when getting out of Apple at $620 before it went down to $390. That was probably my favorite one.
That's probably a personal highlight for you, I would think.
Yeah, that was a career changer, but that's another story. But so yeah, that was definitely just the time when we had the anticipation of Apple and just all the crap that you guys gave me for staying in Apple from 400 up to 700, and that was really a lot of fun, quite frankly. So that was a fun one. Another really good one was when my wife was having all of her medical issues, and just all the thoughts and prayers that went out for her. I know it's been a couple years, but you know what? It's a good feeling to know that there's a lot of people out there in option block land that are out there praying for you and thinking about you, and that really meant a lot to me. And then I would say another one that I really enjoyed, besides, and the Elephant and Castles show is definitely on my list as well, but just another one that we haven't brought up. I still remember the time that we had talked about the Day of Rage, when oil 200 calls on oil actually had a pretty decent sized bid in them, and we were kind of going through analyzing oil trades before the Day of Rage, because I guess everything in the Middle East was going to go haywire the next day, and that was a fun one for me actually as well.
Yes, the Day of Rage. That is probably a highlight. That's probably the most we've talked about, the longest extended period we've talked about oil on this show, just because it was such a frenzy. And you're right, there were serious bids. If I recall, they may have been trading north of $1 for those 200 strike at a certain point there. It got really just out of control, with, of course, oil hovering around, I think, the 110 handle at the time. So they were just extremely, extremely out of the money calls, and yet all this furor, all this tumult over the potential Day of Rage in Saudi Arabia, and whether that would spill over into other areas of the Middle East, really just sent that speculative fervor off to the races. Of course, you're talking about speculative fervor, can't really do worse than I think when we profiled last year on the show Was it I'll have to find the exact strike and dig it up. Maybe Andrew recall. Was it the Feb 75 strike in VIX when someone piled into 20,000 of those?
Oh, that. Yeah. Now,
I remember that one.
Think about that for a second. But that was pretty awesome. I think, could you search for that?
I am doing so now. So spitball for a while, sir, and I will dig it up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what actually my favorite thing on the show is it's kind of a theme where people just reach for the cheapest, most ridiculous options no matter what. It's like with oil, with VIX, they buy options that really have no chance to ever make any real money. I mean, realistically. But yet time after time, which is also good for people like Mike and myself, who's either, managing somebody's account or me who's like educating, there's always a market for what we do because it's been 2 years now and nothing has changed. Like nothing has changed people going and grabbing the out of the money call. It's unbelievable to me. So, I mean, if I have a favorite thing, it's just that week after week, month after month, we come back and there's somebody else doing the same exact thing. And there's so many ways to do it for either free or a credit or some slightly clever way to get around just paying up for a bunch of juice that's going to go worthless. I'm glad the fact that there's people there buying it because that gives me an opportunity to sell it. But it just still, I am always shocked, and it has never gone away. And I thank the option. I thank the show for that.
I agree, Andrew. There would be no show and no option block, and certainly no odd block if people didn't keep piling in to these ridiculous out-of-the-money calls. There's been so many trades we profiled on the odd block. It's hard to identify one as my stand-away favorite just for the most ridiculous or the most size or the most absurd. But I think that VIX trade, whether it was the Feb 70s or the Feb 75s or whatever in that range it was, I'll try to dig up for the end of the show the exact strike, and it was at least 20,000 going up on that strike. It was ludicrous by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that this guy would buy that strike and not a strike below or not do verticals or all of the myriad things we've discussed on this show over the past 3+ years that are infinitely preferable to just loading up on the out of the money stuff, and yet this guy does so in just such ridiculous fashion that it stands out. I mean, we profile other ones, little biotechs that people have come in and piled into the upside, and then the thing takes off and they make 100% or 1,000% or whatever the case may be. Those are all interesting too and fascinating. Most of the time, people lose money on those trades, but the ridiculous, outlandish ones are really some of the ones that that stand out in our minds. Mr. Viceroy, what is your favorite looking back on one more time? Mr. Viceroy, what is your favorite moment here looking back on the full expanse of your participation here on OB? What is the moment that really resonates for you?
Well, first of all, it sounds like I missed all the really fun shows in the early years. There are a couple shows that stand out, and I think it was my second time on the show was what we called Legal Day 1 here. And Jimmy Rouzan and I were sitting in an office doing the show, and there was this grand party going on out here, champagne corks popping, and I was a rookie to the show. But the other thing that stands out is the amount of listeners I've met. It just kind of stuns me and in a sense I think gratifies everybody who's on the show that I've run into listeners in San Francisco. I ran into listeners in Seattle. I've had a couple listeners, in the driveway while I'm pulling in the car who are neighbors. And it just amazes me the reach of the show. And anytime I misstep, and I've had a couple real faux pas, probably more than a couple since I've come onto the show, the amount of email I get from people who are, kind of tuned in and anxious to talk about stuff. So to me, and I obviously miss the nitty-gritty, what sounds like the alcohol-soaked first couple years. It's just the amount of people who we touch, and I know I sound, kind of sappy now, but the amount of folks that the show reaches who, at one point or another want to reach out and shake hands or introduce themselves or talk about it. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of been the most memorable for me. The live shows, the shows from FIA were also great fun, especially when we did the back-to-back at FIA, and you did Vol Views afterwards, and Jimmy and I were on the show, and then we hung around, and that was a great back-to-back, event.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you were part of that. That was right when you started at OX. And we did listeners who may not have made it. It's a very industry-heavy show. And we did a bunch of our shows. Options Insider Radio Network kind of took over the stage there in the expo hall for a while there on that day. And we did a bunch of our shows back to back to back. And we did Option Block, and then we did Vol Views right after that. And a lot of great shows. And I forgot that, Alex, you were able to sneak onto the stage for those. That was probably your first ever appearance on the Option Block, was it not?
That was, and I think I'm on Skype now, too. So
I was going to say, you miraculously sound so much better. What did you do?
The Skype gods have fondly smiled upon me. But yeah, I hate to sound sappy. It's the number of people that have reached out because of the show. And as I say, the number, I get emails when I misstep. I also get a lot of emails from folks who are just real happy listeners and want more. And, in some ways, that's the best part of this.
Speaking of listeners who want more, many of you took the opportunity to write in with your comments and ideas and suggestions and, of course, well wishes on our 300th episode spectacular. So it wouldn't be right and proper if we didn't give you guys a chance to sound off as well, because it is really, at the end of the day, all about you. If you guys weren't tuning in and listening and going to the events and going to see Alex when he's off in San Fran and everything else, then this show really wouldn't be happening. So we're really, probably all of us, most thankful for you guys tuning in and just keep tuning in such droves and record numbers that we really just can't ignore you guys. It's too hard. So let's kick it off here with some great comments and questions we had pouring in. Some people, it's funny to see what their favorite moments from the show are. We'll start off here. We have an email here. Actually, this is a tweet from Philip M. He goes by the handle B2Bore. And he writes, great show, guys. Fun times listening to the Option Block. Keep up with what you guys love to do. So there we go. Thank you, Philip. Glad you could tune into the show, and I'm glad that it brings a little bit of brightness to the day. This next one comes in from Jay Thomas. He writes, congrats to the voice of Options. I haven't heard that one in a while. On 300 episodes of the Option Block. Keep them coming, as this show makes my Tuesdays and Fridays much more bearable. Well, Jay, we're glad we could help in some small way to jazz up your work or your commute or whatever it is you do on Tuesdays and Fridays. And stay tuned to more, because we plan on many more episodes here of the Option Block. And yeah, the voice of Options. A lot of people keep writing in wanting me to adopt that. I tend not to read those on the air, but maybe I need to, because there seems to be a groundswell of that. We got some people writing in about that later on. Oh, you like this one, Mike. Next one is from Ian Getz. He goes by just Ian Getz on Twitter here. He writes, congratulations in advance on the 300th episode of the Option Block. Mike Tosaws BBI and successful Apple saga were my favorite 2013 moments. So there you go, Mike. Your bathroom stories have found a fan out there.
Who'd have thought? I'm gonna go back and tell my grade school teachers bathroom humor can help you to become successful as an adult.
Exactly. Potty humor leads the charge. But he actually is pretty spot on with what he likes. That's almost exactly what you said, aside from the BBI, about the successful Apple saga. He's talking about 2013 maybe here, so maybe he's talking about all your much doing stuff in Apple over the past 6 months as well. But yeah, he probably is talking as well about the infamous sale at the 620 level and all the stuff you've done since.
It was a ton of fun, that's for sure.
So Uncle Mike Tosaw getting a little shout out in the listener love here. Next one is from listener goes by the handle Jim Jam. I like that. He says, "Love the show. What's with all the nicknames?" Well, that's probably my fault, Mr. Jim Jam. I am but a bit of a nickname fiend. He says, "Why doesn't Mark L have a nickname? How about the leader, the general, hostmaster, or Barry White of options?"
Barry White of options. King of segues.
Oh, that's hilarious. I like that one. General. The Barry White of options is kind of a fun one. Of course, the other listener wrote in, wants me to start using the voice of options again. That's kind of a similar thematic thing, I think, to the Barry White. Maybe we'll have to find some middle ground there that works. But yes, the nicknames, that pretty much comes from me. Mr. Jim Jam. That's just something I do with all of my shows. I like to, whenever I have a bunch of co-hosts, who wants to remember everyone's name? It gets kind of silly. It gets kind of crazy. And plus, it makes listeners have a little bit more engagement if you slap some sort of silly moniker on everybody. Hence, Andrew is the Rock Lobster. Alex is the Viceroy. Tosaw is simply Uncle Mike Tosaw because it fits his personality so well. Sebastian, of course, the greasy meatball. What more can you say about him? Grigus, you kind of escaped the nickname machine. How did that ever happen?
I thought I had some Oriental nickname. What did you call me again? Major Domo or I don't know.
That's what I called you as your new title over there at Schwab. You're the Major Domo over there. But yes, I don't know if that was ever your official nickname on the show. You can adopt an Oriental nickname if you like, as long as it doesn't offend.
You probably didn't want to nickname me because we're paying the bills. So.
As long as it doesn't offend any of our Asian listeners, you can adopt any nickname you like, sir.
I'll tell you what, my favorite nickname of the bunch, I have to say, is the Viceroy. That's the most unique one I think I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of nicknames in my day, but the Viceroy has got to be the most creative, best nickname I've ever heard.
And Mark, that one's new to me. So maybe what's the background on that one? I thought you said Vice Lord at the beginning of the show, but it's Vice Gray
versus the Latin Kings and Gangster Disciples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. That's one I just came up with for Alex. I think one day he was doing his express block and educating the masses on some topic here or there, and it just seemed to go well with the topic at hand. Of course, it's usually used in some sort of nautical phrasing, but if we're here, it really just applies to Alex and his many jaunty caps that he likes to wear when he's dispensing options knowledge. I can't see him right now, so hopefully he has a very nice and fine jaunty cap on in honor of our 300th episode spectacular. Alex, I'm sure you're doing me proud.
Yeah, I am. But you know what's going through John's head right now is like, what have I missed in the year I've been off? What's been going on here?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's clearly we've gotten out of control.
Yes, we have very much gotten out of control. I'm trying to think, John. It's been probably about 100 episodes since you've been on. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think I left right after the 200th, so it's been it's been about a year less. It's been about 13 months, just over a year.
And you're not this. I know we touched on it at the beginning of the show a little bit, but what is your new title over there these days at Schwab? What are you doing when you're not really on the trading desk as much anymore?
Yeah, I'm more of a desktop procedure writer now for all of the things that we do at OX. That Schwab is making sure we got on paper. That's what they like to say. If you don't, you have a procedure for that? Yeah, I point to my head, my brain, got it up here. They said, put it on paper. So we're putting everything down on paper for the last year, which makes sense, but
Yeah, John's being modest. He still basically has his finger on the trading operation here at OX. He's got the wheel and he steers the ship.
Well, I'm glad to see that your many appearances.
So wait a minute. Does that mean when somebody fat figures it, it's John at Schwab? Just putting the finger down on Schwab accounts, firing 500 futures off at a crack in the E-mini. So is that what the finger is? Because I was trying to figure out who is the guy that fat fingers the market all the time. They say, somebody made a mistake on a trade desk and 500 E-minis go off at a pop or something like that. What's going on?
Yeah,
in all seriousness. Yeah, but in all seriousness, that's not here because the risk controls. Your money line gets read before you shoot the order in. So in all seriousness, it's more likely that a fat finger is somebody who's sitting on a ready terminal or some closer to direct access terminal. If we're being serious about who makes those kind of mistakes. Even the exchanges now, even the electronic access at many of the new exchanges have risk controls in place. So it's a little more challenging to fat finger. But Andrew, to your point, somebody seems to do it just periodically. It happens.
Now, for just somebody who's fat fingered before, when I was just starting on a stock desk, in the old days with an internet terminal, you could sell like 100,000 shares. Like, oh, whoops.
Yes,
it's not that difficult. Let's just say there was nothing to keep you from doing that. And I did do it.
One of my salient memories from my early days as a clerk on the exchange was coming in after a hefty night of celebrating the night before and finishing up the day by moving the Dow about 10 points in the after hours or something crazy like that. I forgot what it was. I launched a ton of IBM. Way more than ever should have necessary to be moved, and it was an interesting experience. Let me just say. So yeah, it can be done very easily.
It can be done really easily.
One day when we have some time, I'll tell you about on October 19th, a Merck clerk, a trader in the OEX, who wanted to buy futures, and this literally is on the 17th. The Friday before expiration, the 16th, who, for those who've never seen the SIBO, back in OEX days, back when the OEX did a lot of business, the pit was surrounded by what were called Merck clerks. And the Merck clerks were live clerks on the phone, actually a headset to the SPX pit at the CME, and you would wave a hand signal into them, and they would flip down their microphone and talk to a broker in the SPX and buy and sell the SPOOs to hedge the OEX. And I say it's a longer story. I'll just tell part of it now. But a Merck clerk, instead of buying a few thousand futures, shorted a few thousand futures. And because it was expiration Friday, they didn't get the fill back till well after the market had closed, and I'll leave that as a teaser for a later show. Wasn't a fat finger, it was just misunderstanding the hand signal.
And speaking of fat fingers, we are now joined by Mr. Fat Finger Trade himself, a.k.a. Federal Holiday Mike, a.k.a. Monday Mike, a.k.a. Mr. Mike Cavanaugh, the original part of the Mike tag team over here on the Option Blog, joining us for the 300th episode spectacular. Mr. Cavanaugh, glad you can make it. Welcome to the big 300 episode, sir.
Thank you very much. That is quite the introduction. I'm happy to be on the 300th episode. That Auntie Mike, as Andrew just pointed out.
Oh, yes. I forgot Mike your best nickname, Auntie Mike. Some of my best work.
Auntie Mike is here.
Well, glad you could make it. We've all had a chance to kind of go around the horn and reminisce about some of our favorite moments from the past. It's been 3 years and 3 months now since this show kicked off. What comes to mind to you the most in your time on the show and in interacting with it since? What are the really resonant memories for you here about the Option Block?
There's so many, but the one that stands out at me, it was in the unusual activity, I would say, maybe 2 years ago. It was the Darden Restaurant Group, and Mr. Sebastian went on a tear about the warm biscuits from Red Lobster for about 20 minutes. And that somehow tied into Andrew being from Maine and earning the moniker of the lobster. And it just spiraled downhill from there, but it was pretty funny to be part of the Darden Restaurant Group unusual activity report that day.
Yes, I forgot about that. That was a good one. You're right. And ever since, whenever we have any sort of representative from the Darden Restaurant Group on the show, whenever Mark's on, it just triggers some sort of Vietnam-esque flashback in him, and he starts ranting about the biscuits yet again.
You know, and funny enough, Darden is in unusual activity today. It was down a couple of bucks, $2.50.
There you go.
I know I sent the text to Mark, and he's like, darn right, it should be down $2. It should be at zero.
But the biscuits keep it up.
Yeah, I got to say, there's got to be at least $2 worth of biscuit premium in that price alone.
You know what I didn't know is the Capitol Grill is part of the Darden Group. I don't know how that got in there.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to fit with the rest of the brand.
Red Lobster, Capitol Grill. I don't get it. But hey, that's why I'm not a restaurateur. I just eat at them.
Well, Mike, we were just in the middle of letting some of our listeners sound off here on our 300th episode. All right, continuing with the listener mail extravaganza, we got one here from, goes by the handle Mr. Ill. He writes, "Thanks, Mark, for bringing us so much great content over the years, and congrats to the whole all-star panel on Option Block 300. I enjoy the whole network, but OB is far and away my favorite. There's nothing else like it on the air." And I think you hit on something there, Mr. Ill. You're right. We do a lot of great programming. I love them all. They're all my babies in all different ways. But there is something that resonates about this program that is something that just kind of came up naturally as we were doing the show. Maybe it's just a rapport between the different cohorts. Maybe it's the mix of content that we do. It's something there. There's something in that secret sauce that makes this show very unique. And it clearly has resonated with a lot of you guys out there as well. And I think all of us here are really just happy to be a part of it. For 300 episodes and hopefully for 300 more. Next up here, we have a question from, actually more of a comment from Tim Meads, writing from Scenic, Montana. You'll like this one, Alex. He writes, "I just discovered this show, and I'm looking forward to perusing the other 299 episodes in the archive." Well, hopefully you have at least, 12 days, if not 25, Tim, for your listening, because there's a lot of Option Block to get through. He says, "Here's to episode 600. Well, we're with you. And then P.S., where can I get a jaunty Viceroy cap? So, Alex, where's your fine haberdasher, and where can he find some of your favorite hatwear?
I had to send a friend out on a Hong Kong desk to get the Viceroy hat. So I know of no domestic source at this time, but if we could find a good charity, we'll auction this one. But seriously, I know of no Viceroy source in the greater Chicago or Midwest.
So there you have it, listeners. Maybe send an email to Alex, and he'll give you his connection in Hong Kong, who can hook you up with a fine, jaunty Viceroy cap of your very own. Maybe we can have some branded Viceroy caps for some OX swag we can give out at some of our events. I mean, it might be a fun little tchotchke from the show. All right, next up we have Dave S. writing in from scenic and sunny Burbank, California. He writes, "My favorite Option Block show title," and we have had quite a few crazy ones. We have some fun over there. I know Kyle and Danielle on the editing team really have some fun with the headlines and the titles as well. And they said he says, "My favorite OB show title is probably Netflix Strangles Children from episode 261. Wishing you continued success." If you guys, that was actually, I believe, from July of this year. And that was a fun one. I think we were talking about some big strangles that were going up in Netflix at the time, and somehow it parlayed into strangling children. So yes, we have, Dave, had some fun show titles over the past 3+ years. All right, I think that's a good cue for us. Some of these questions are pretty lengthy, so we'll get to them next week in some listener mail. All right, and a lot of you I know wrote in with some questions you wanted answered about various option strategies and questions. I think we're going to save those for next week because we are running a little bit short on time, and this is really more of an episode full of just time wasting and reminiscing and navel gazing and all that fun stuff you come to expect from the Option Block over these 300 and some odd episodes. So you guys who wrote in with questions, don't worry, we'll get to those next week. But now we actually do have to wrap up this 300th episode spectacular. Let me go around the horn once again and check in with each of you to see if you have any thoughts, any final memories or things you want to leave the listeners with before you go. Starting off with you, Mr. Andrew. What are some of your favorite thoughts or memories, and what do you want to leave the listeners here with on our 300th episode spectacular?
Mostly, keep listening to the show. One is, it's probably one of the best good free sources of options, information, and education you can get. Because I see a lot of stuff out there, and most of it's total junk. And at least you're hearing it from people that have had to live and breathe it for most of their adult lives. So you might as well get it from a decent source. And, of course, the price is always right.
That is indeed a good price. Welcome, sir, and thank you again for participating on so many fine programs.
It has been and will be a pleasure.
All right, and thank you for that, Andrew. And how about Uncle Mike Tosaw? What do we want to leave our listeners with here as we wrap up on the big episode 300?
Well, one thing Andrew mentioned about how everyone on this show has lived and breathed options for most of their adult life. I think the one common theme that we all have, we've argued on the show, we've had our differences, we've had our agreements, but there's one thing that is the common mainstay of any trader that I've ever met, and that is risk management. Live to trade another day. That's something that can never be emphasized enough, whether you're a degenerate premium buyer or a degenerate premium seller or a spreader or whatever you may be. Have a plan in terms of risk management. That's something that's been a very common thing over the course of the last 299 episodes and will be for the next 299 episodes, because if it's not, then none of us will be in business anymore.
And hey, given how much it's resonated, I'm sure we'll have many more updates on the BBI in the episodes to come.
Absolutely.
And Auntie Mike, sir, what would you like to leave our listeners with here on the big episode 300 spectacular?
I just want to wish everybody a happy and safe holiday and thank them for listening to the first 300 episodes of the Option Block. It's been a slice, and the next 300, a lot to look forward to. A lot to look forward to. So happy holidays, listeners.
And jaunty Mr. Viceroy, take us home, sir. What are your final thoughts, reminiscences, memories, looking forward ahead here as we're on episode 300 and perhaps looking forward to 400 and beyond?
Yeah, I think the two Mikes could not have said it better. First of all, everybody have a great holiday. Spend time with family. The Tosaws comment is far and away the most important thing you can learn in options. And the way I was taught it was don't learn how to get rich, learn how not to get poor. And that's kind of the key in options. Manage risk, don't over leverage, don't run an account to zero SMA. Just have a real clear picture of what you can make and what you can lose and at what prices you can do it at. And if something's got a 90% probability of making you money, that's terrific. But please understand what the other 10% is and don't discount it. Don't turn around and say it won't happen. But that's the key. Mike's point, live to trade another day.
All right, and unfortunately, Mr. Grigus, a.k.a. the fat-fingered one himself, had to run, so he won't be able to give us his final thoughts. So I'll just close us out here by really, I want to thank all of you guys out there in the listening audience, because truthfully, it sounds cliche, it sounds corny, but really, you guys are the reason that we do this, and it has been so gratifying not just to meet you guys at various events and see all the great questions and comments that you guys write in on a regular basis, but to see, how the show continues to grow and evolve, both with the content that we do and the response we get from you guys, the audience. Show's been around for a while now. Sometimes shows like that tend to stagnate. What we've seen is just a increased uptake, increased response to this show every month since we launched it, and that's really been very, very gratifying for us here. And this show at various times has been in the top 10, the top 5 even on investing in places like iTunes and stuff, outranking a lot of much higher profile things from CNBC and much larger financial outlets. So to see that kind of response to a very targeted program like this from a bunch of us really just sitting around reminiscing and shooting the breeze and edumacating and analyzing some options, it's really been very gratifying to see that kind of response. So thanks again for tuning in for the past 306 episodes, counting all those sneak previews. And we'll be certainly be looking forward to the coming 300 episodes and beyond. Hopefully we'll be doing this again in 3 more years and be looking back on episode 600. So until then, listeners, stay tuned, and we'll see you next time right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting, and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.